and Instagram is telling my followers that I have started a live. Hello everyone, long time I don't see you here in a live format in Instagram. How's everyone? Hello Annie. Hello everyone. Here now in the future. Susanna Mitimaya just joining. Let's continue inviting everyone to join this live. Hi Susanna. And today we're gonna have a really cool conversation about pragmatic psychology. And what can we learn, create, and receive from this conversation? I am so happy that Susanna is joining me, and I'm going to view her request. She's going to be here.
So we are very excited because I accept Susanna. Susanna is coming to Dublin, Ireland for a live class. So, Susanna is here now. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Does the sound work like this?
Yes, it does. It does for me. Yeah. I'm great. I'm very excited and
Me?
very honored. Thank you for joining me for this live. As I was saying before you got in, this conversation started when you told me that you're having a class live from Dublin on the 9th and also online. And I was like, okay, so what about we explore what it is, pragmatic psychology. So Susanna, can you tell us how did it start actually? I would love to know how everything started.
You know, actually, it started from pure curiosity.
Okay.
I was working. I tried to be a normal psychologist. I tried to be a normal psychotherapist. That's what I studied. And before then, I was one of these people who never knew what they really want in life. I always knew what other people want, what makes other people happy. I was really, really good at that, but I never trained myself to know what makes me happy. So at the point where it was about what you like to do in life, as job and profession, I'm like, no clue. So I explored different studies and all that stuff, and at one point I'm like, okay, what are the things that I want? And it was all about, hey, I always wanted to show the world that happiness is a possibility, no matter what past you had, no matter how horrible your childhood has been, and that you have choice to go there. And I'm like, what is that job called? There was obviously no job description for that, but the closest I could find was to become a psychologist. And so I did, and I was living in Sweden at the time, yes. And I was studying at the university clinic to become a psychologist. And, it was part of that was also psychotherapy. And I was very surprised what psychology is in this world, I must say. I'm like, okay, but I had tried so many things, and I'm, didn't want to disappoint my parents again. So I'm like, okay, let's finish something, So I finished that study, and I got a job first at child oncology, and then later at the psychiatric hospital, where I met patients with super many different diagnoses, like everything from ADHD, autism, OCD, personality disorders, depression, anxiety, you name it. And my job was to, do the psychology stuff, therapy and neuropsychological testings and staff counseling and all that stuff. And I did it from the perspective that I had from my studies, which was, here's a problem, fix it. Or here's someone with this and this diagnosis, make them as functional as possible, / make them as normal as possible. And so I was never really happy with that perspective. So for me, it was like, okay, there must be something different. And so I started with more question in the back of my head, like, okay, so here's a person that supposedly has a disability according to other people, and according to the whole
The system.
system. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm sitting in front of these people, right? And I could not see the problem. Like literally, I couldn't see the problem. I couldn't see the disability. All I saw was, here's someone who functions in a different way. Okay, cool. So what's the resource here? How can we use this for them to have, a wonderful life, a life worth living? How can they learn to use their, you know, so-called disability for as an ability. And that's how it all started. And I always feel like, hey, like this pragmatic perspective for me is so normal and has always been. And pragmatic for me is like doing what works. And in a world that is very dramatic, not pragmatic, dramatic is like what we've been handed since we're children. You know, there's always a problem, and that problem looks for a possible, like looks for a solution. But that solution search is already validating the problem. You know, when you go, I have to find a solution, you already have decided that you have a problem. You don't look for a possibility. You don't look for lightness or for pragmatics or for this. You have already very fixed, you know, perspective, and that perspective shapes your view. It shapes your life. It creates your life. And so this is like a very strange perspective that the two-leggeds on this planet have, that I was always different. And I'm like, okay, let's do something with it. And then I started, you know, looking for what else, where else, what else can I add to my life? And there must be something different. And then, you know, at one point, a friend of mine in Sweden said, hey, there's this person coming from America and she's doing this, you know, new thing called access consciousness. And I'm like, I don't care what it is. I'm just looking for something different. And, you know, I found myself sitting in one of those seminars, and it was, I loved and hated it at the same time, because it was honestly, like, on the one hand, it was like, man, my mind was like, this can't be so, you know, I know it's easy, but come on, I studied this. But then something changed in me where I'm like, wait a second, this totally acknowledges what is true for me, that sense of lightness, right? And so that was about 14 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it's a very long time ago. And, you know, there was not many people using those tools back in. And then I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and we had so many cool conversations. And he's like, okay, so what are you bringing to the world? What new paradigm of psychology and change are you bringing to the world? And I'm like, me, I'm just working in Sweden. That's it. And he's like, yeah, maybe you want to look at it. And so I started to be my own guinea pig and go, okay, so there's tools that acknowledge what's true for me, and everything changed for me. And I'm like, okay, so this obviously works for me. So how can I, you know, apply this to those people that I work with? So I started to extrapolate those tools. And
what's that like? Did you have, I just wanna pick up one thing in that, you know, before you continue. Did you have some sort of a barrier? People were like, this is too different. Looking at, you know, psychology in this way. Did you have to kind of overcome that, or was it?
Very early, actually, very early. It was the realization how much time and energy I invested in something that wasn't totally true for me. And it's not just for the study, it's the whole life. I mean, most of us live a life that's not true for us. We live someone else's life. And when I realized that, it was really full, like turning on those lights and becoming so present with myself in my life, realizing where I'm not being me, realizing where I'm choosing someone else's version of living, of life. I'm like, wow, that was intense. That was like in my face, and it was not comfortable at all, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it. And I realized, man, I've invested so much energy and so much time in something that is not congruent with me. Okay. And I chose gratitude. First, I was like shocked and intense, but then I'm like, okay, I chose gratitude towards me to be willing to look at that, because, you know, for all of us who get out of the, how do you say, the hamster wheel,
rut race, sort of thing.
It takes balls, you know, it takes balls to do. It really takes courage to go, wait a second, what am I actually doing here? Like, whose life am I living? And so that was the intensity, and the hardship was really, really worth it. And then, you know, seeing what that creates for the patients that I work with was incredible. And that started, you know, ball rolling. And I remember like my colleagues going, I don't know what you're doing, but
something's happening.
their patients that they didn't know what to do with. It was really, really, really cool. And nobody was interested in how I did it, but they just saw that something occurred. And it challenged so much of other people's colleagues, perspectives, of course, because none of us was taught to do their job with ease or joy. Like I remember back in the days when I did normal, therapy stuff, I was so tired. I was just sleeping in the evenings, and my weekends were, I was sleeping in the weekends. I didn't have a life. I was just like functioning for my job, and then it drained me of energy to work with patients. And then changing my way of working with the pragmatic psychology tools and their perspective, suddenly I had a life. Like working with my patients suddenly was not only changing their lives, it also contributed to me. And I got inspired and I got new ideas, and I learned from them, they learned from me. It was so mutual. It is mutual.
Yeah.
That for me is that, adding that pragmatic element is where literally everything changed. And so that,
crossing over there, and then so the book came.
yeah,
I'm taking the book came. So you wrote yourself, or you and Gary?
No, I wrote the first book myself. I didn't have plan of writing a book. The first book was me taking notes while I was working. I was with my patients and then going, oh wow, this and this, and I just wrote down notes for myself, and and this aha and this aha, and I just wrote them down, and I wrote them in a coffee shop or on the beach, wherever I was. And then Gary asked, are you writing a book? And I'm like, am I writing a book? And then I literally asked the page, you want to become a book? And that felt so light, and I didn't know how to write a book. I was never really good in school about writing. I always got bad grades in that. So I'm like, I didn't see myself as an author at all. I was just like, blah, 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 blah. But there's people who help you make nice sentences. So I had like editors and people who help, because I wrote the book in English, and English is not my first language, but it felt easier to write it in English. And because I was studying Swedish at the time and Spanish. And so I was like, I had all these languages in my head. I'm like, okay, this needs to be written in English. So that was the first book that came out. Okay. And I remember when that was published, it was so diverse, or how do you say, it was so different than the normal way of looking at psychology, that I was doing this. I was like, okay,
oh dear.
I'm not going to read any reviews, because maybe I will be thrown tomatoes at, and I will be thrown into exile. Who knows? And then, and then to my surprise, it showed up totally different.
Amazing. And now you have even the second one, the advanced pragmatic psychology. How does it get any better? So I just want to say hi to everyone that said hi. Hi guys. And someone mentioned, and he said, I can say from experience, it's very difficult to be dramatic in the presence of Susanna. And he says that. And Lily says, I choose to be a pragmatic practitioner. Susanna, can you tell us a little bit about, so from you, studying pragmatic psychology, and then you wrote the book, how did it come about that it became a specialty through Access Consciousness? And if I'm going to want to study, what would be the steps that I could do to join and become one?
So it's like the background was, I was like, for years, I was the only one bringing this to the world. Like, when people said, oh, like, who in my country is working with the tools of pragmatic psychology? I'm like, sorry, right now it's only me, because, I created this, and it's, and then that spurred in me, okay, so what would it take for there to be other people around the world to use these tools, where people can go, oh, I'm looking for someone in my country who uses this. And so I started to, how do you say, educate people, train people in pragmatic psychology. And now, like years later, it's so cool. We have like people all over the world, and they're called pragmatic practitioners. Oh. So there's like pragmatic practitioners all over the world now who are trained in these tools. They're really brilliant people who have the vulnerability, like two parts. which I love. It's they use the tools for themselves, so they walk their talk. Like having tools and just like preaching them, it doesn't work, and that's not how we want to do it. Like with pragmatic psychology, we want to live it, we want to embody it, we want to walk our talk. So the tools, the people that are trained in that, they educate themselves and they train those tools every day in their lives, to make their lives greater and more wonderful in every area: money, relationship, body, you name it, like, parenting, business. And then they also are trained in facilitating other people. And I know the word facilitating is not normal yet in every language, because other people call it coaching, or yeah. But facilitating has for me it's such a great word, because it comes from Latin and means facile, which is making easier. So you're basically like the easier
I
maker.
didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
so cool. Yeah,
yeah.
easier maker. Yeah,
That's
makes sense.
I love that word. It's like you're the easier maker, and so these people are trained to facilitate change in a pragmatic way. And all of these people have different backgrounds, which is so cool. So they some of them, use it as parents or grandparents. Some of them use it as doctors, like, for example, dentists. Teachers, we have teachers who use it in their schools. Different business people who use it in their businesses. So coaches, therapists. So these people have different like backgrounds and ways of using the tools, and then they use it for their business, they use it for their clients, they use it for like business clients, they use it for school teachers or school students, like whoever their clients are.
Yeah.
They apply those tools their unique way in their unique setting, and it's amazing what that creates. And now these people can be found like all over the world for sessions or in their workplace.
Yeah, Jürgen just added the link here for anyone that's looking for that. So then you have those classes, and on the 9th, live from Dublin and online, anyone can join online. Then if you're not in Dublin, you're not coming to Dublin. You have the 1-day class. So is this a class that people get certificate? Is that a manual? What are you going to be talking about? Tell us. Exciting.
Yeah. And it's a class where you can like start discovering those tools of using those pragmatic change tools for yourself and your own life, and also how to work with clients. So it's already like very practical, hands-on, getting into that field. And yeah, so it's you can join us live or online, and it's really cool to discover, wait a second, wow, change can be easy. It doesn't have to be what we've been taught that it should be.
That's so cool. And Annie says, I can only recommend the Pragmatic Practitioner classes for yourself to have more ease with really everything in life. And then also to practice using the tools with other people. Thank you, Annie. Susanna, before we go, would you like to share a tool or an insight that you kept seeing with your clients once you change the tools and you are this pragmatic psychologist? What would you say, and what can you share with us that we could take it for us and use in our day-to-day life?
Well, wow, so many. So which one do I pick? So okay, so one perspective that might be very relevant right now in the times we live in, is there's a culture that is, so loud right now, where people doubt themselves, and it's fostered and nurtured by everything we hear in the news, or wherever the news are, where it's all about dramatics and the horrible things going on and the future that we can't have and all that stuff. And so that is something that fosters a lot of fear and doubt. And that is something you don't have to become the effect of, unless you choose it for a moment, and that's not wrong either. And but you can, like, knowing that you can trust yourself, your superpower, your how do you say, antidote to all that stuff that's going on, to all that horrible new stuff, is your knowing. And I don't mean your cognitive knowing, not the one that comes from your mind, but your other people might call it
Intuition.
Intuition, or your gut feeling.
Feeling.
And there's different names for it. We call it knowing. Knowing is like you can tap into an infinite buffet of knowing just by asking for it. It's like you could ask, okay, so I hear all this stuff going on. What is true for me here? What do I know? Is any of this real, or is this like a fabricated reality that's been broadcasted? What is actually true for me? And that's something you can ask for, choose, go for, and truly like go for trusting it. And one tool you can use to practice trusting that is take 1 or 2 or 3 situations in your life, in your past, where you knew something would occur. You didn't have the information, but you can sense it. You knew, okay, I know this is going to be this way. Or you maybe simple, you went on a date, and you knew beforehand, oof, that's not going to be a good idea, but you did it anyway. Yeah. And then afterwards you went, oh gosh, I knew it. And sometimes you followed your knowing and sometimes you didn't. So just like remind yourself of a couple of situations where you knew and what occurred when you trusted that and what occurred when you didn't trust that. And that's how you can start practicing trusting yourself, because that's right now in the times we live in, one of the biggest antidotes to becoming the effect of insanity. It's trusting that you know and knowing that you know.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. Mic drop. Thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you everyone that's been here. And I will be posting the link to the class. So very excited that, if you're in London, if you are in the UK, if you are in Dublin, Ireland, and you are in Europe, you can come and join us live or online for this class coming up, the one-day class on the 9th of this month. No, of March. Oh dear, February is ending.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm so excited to have you here. And thank you, Susanna. And I hope to see you soon. And
Yes.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.